I'm Mitchell Ellis, and I just want to take a minute and show you how to use the Easy Potter. This machine is a Max, but whether it's a small Easy Potter or the big Easy Potter, it really doesn't matter because the controller is pretty much the same. Even on our bare root model, there are some things in here that you won't need, but we're going to show you what you do need to be able to run and adjust a machine like this. Before you even get started with a machine like this, to try to set it up to run, you're going to need a measure tape. And here's a ratchet with a 9/16 socket, or either you can use a crescent wrench, and you may want to have a rubber hammer. This is a steel hammer, but you can use either one. Just don't get crazy with a steel hammer. But anyway, we're going to show you a few little steps on how to run it. One of the things I want to make sure that you know is, you see this right here? This is a stylus. This is not a ballpoint pen. We've had people buy machines, they take a ballpoint pen and they start pushing these buttons, then they wonder why their touch screen don't work. That's exactly what it is. It's a touch screen. So be sure to try to use a stylus with it to be able to touch this, because it's delicate and the touch screens are pretty expensive. So this is the touch screen that you'll be looking at in the beginning. You'll have a choice whether you want to be able to run the machine in auto or whether you want to be able to run the machine in the manual mode. This is a drive status, don't worry about that, and this is a setup, don't worry about that point. When you run it in manual, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's two things I want to mention now, and I'll also mention it later. You might wonder why your machine won't run. The drill has to be turned on. The auger has to be in forward motion before the thing will come on and drill. Another thing is, towards the end of the program, I'm going to show you, it's going to have 1 gallon, 2 gallon, 3 gallon, up to 15 gallons. You'll have to have one of them selected or it's not going to work as well. Now, down below this touch screen, you'll see these controls right here. This is an emergency stop button. That's exactly what it is. It's emergency stop. It's not a start stop button. So if I push this button in, what you can do to release it is just turn it to the right like this and it'll pop back out. Sometimes you'll have to go in and you'll have to put your username. The username is capital E, then little l, L-I-S. So that's Ellis. And the password is 6466. If you forget, it's the last 4 digits of the phone number. So that's Ellis with a capital E, and the password is 6466. Okay, now I'm going to show you a few other features on this machine. Okay, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to set this up for somebody who's going to be putting like a 1 gallon into a 3 gallon pot. So I've got 2 blow mold 3 gallon pots, and I'm going to set them up. Now, what I want to show you right here, most pots have a lip on the top, and what I want you to do is I want you to adjust your rail up to where it's right underneath this lip. There's several reasons for that, because your limit switch, it'll keep soil from building up on the conveyor belt and catching it and tripping your limit switch. And also, when the plate comes down on the top and puts pressure on the pot, it can crush it like this. And having the soil in the pot and having approximately 2 inches of soil on top of it, it packs it down in here. When you got the right moisture content, it forms a good hole. And actually, the rails help to keep it from crushing the pot, because some of these pot companies, they just get thinner and thinner with thermoforms, blow molds. If you're using injection molds, you're in pretty good shape. So anyway, I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to set my rails up. I'm going to go ahead, because these rails here are just laying right down on the conveyor belt. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop for just a minute, and I'm going to adjust my rails up, and I'm going to get this pot right in the center. So bear in mind that if your hole is not drilling in the center, chances are you ain't got your rails adjusted right. And that's the reason it's not drilling in the center. So I'm going to get it all centered up right quick, and then I'm going to go a little bit further and show you a little bit more. Okay, now what I'm going to show you is I adjusted my rails up with my ratchet and my 9/16 socket. I adjusted them up. Now I'm going to show you something that I'm going to do right now. So bring the camera over this way and I'll show you. Okay, so I got my rail right here underneath this lip. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this pot in the center right here. So that's a 1 gallon drill bit, and you have got to have the proper packing plate, because if the distance between the edge of the drill bit and the inner diameter of the packing plate is too big, it just won't work properly. And if you got a plate that's too big, well, what happens is it builds up too much soil on here and it can fall over into the next hole. So you try to keep your packing plate the size of the pot. If you put in a 1 gallon into a 3 gallon, you put in a 1 gallon into a 3 gallon, or 1 gallon to a 15, you'll need 3 different packing plates with the same ID on all of them, okay? All right, so I've got this pot here right now, and I've got it centered up this way, okay? Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to put this second pot in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this one down here, and I'm going to move this one into place of where that one is, okay? So there it is right there. Now what I want to do is I want to move this second pot till it touches this one, okay? Now there's an arm right here on the limit switch. If you bring the camera right here, you can see this arm on this limit switch. That arm on that limit switch sits at about a 40-degree angle roughly, okay? All right, now let me show you what I'm going to do. I've already loosened my bolts on this limit switch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide this down, and this wheel on this limit switch goes right in the middle of those 2 pots, okay? So the wheel on the limit switch goes right in the middle of these 2 pots. Now what I'm going to show you how to do is how to set your registered offset. Your registered offset is what has to be right to tell your machine when to drill the pots. So I'm going to move this pot out of the way, okay? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this limit switch. Sometimes you can't hear it because of noise, but you can feel it. So I'm going to move this limit switch right there until it clicks. Now I'm going to slide this second pot up until it touches the limit switch, and I'm holding it in place. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the distance between the center of this pot and the center of this drill bit, and it's roughly about 8 inches. So after this pot right here comes up to the arm on the limit switch and it clicks, it's tripped, the distance between the center of this pot and the center of this drill bit right here is 8 inches. So what if I'm off a little bit? Big deal, we can adjust it. We just gonna get it close. I had somebody call me the other day, they was doing exactly the same thing, and he says, my machine is drilling every other pot. I said, what's your registered offset? He said, 12 inches. I said, well, you remember we set it up at our shop and I showed you? That's way too much. So all he had to do is adjust this to correct the situation. So that's how you set your registered offset. Once your registered offset is in, we're going to show you how to program it in a minute, but once you got this in place, then you just snug up these bolts right here so it can't move. It's better to use a ratchet so you don't bust your knuckles, okay? So now I'm going to move these 2 pots out of the way because the registered offset is set at this time, okay? All right, now we're going to talk about oh, I forgot one thing. Let me show you right quick. This pot right here goes right up underneath this thing to rake the soil off. This right here, normally speaking, with a normal nursery mix, the bottom of these flaps set about 2 inches above that pot. That way it gives you some compaction. So I'm going to stop just a minute and I'm going to do that right. Okay, now you can see that we lowered this so that it can wipe the soil off the top of the pots. It's not so critical on big pots, but on small pots it's important that this thing spins and turns, because if you're going at high speed, it actually helps and keeps the pots from turning back over. So right here you'll notice this, it's got a couple of jam nuts on it. And that's so once you get it adjusted, you can tighten this up and you can snug them down and it'll keep it from backing back off and keep this thing from working loose while you're potting. Now another thing we started doing is putting a set collar on here, because a lot of people try to move this up. What they would do is they would push that shaft up out of that hollow bore gearbox, and the keyway will fall down in their potting soil and they would lose it. So now this thing's pretty snug and pretty tight. Okay, so now you've got your, we call it a whirly bird. You got your whirly bird adjusted, and you've got your limit switch adjusted, and we got our rails adjusted. Okay, so the mechanical part is done right there. Now I'll show you a couple other things. All right, now what I want to show you, let's just say that we're going to do some filling and drilling. So what I want to do is I want to hit auto. Now it gives me the option to fill only, or it gives me the option to fill and drill. So I'm going to touch fill and drill. Okay. All right, did you see that warning that come up the top? It says drill not ready, turn on before starting. That's the drill that I showed you just a second ago, the auger. It has to be turned on. If you don't turn it on, you're not going to do any potting. It's not going to drill. The belt's not going to move, and you're going to wonder, why ain't this thing moving? Well, anyway, when you get a pot machine, you want to start with it slow. You might want to start with a speed of maybe 15 pots. So just go 15.00 and then hit enter. So that's how easy it was to change the speed. That ppm, it don't mean pots per minute. Don't worry about it. Now, what we've got to do right here is we got to measure the drill depth of the drill bit, and a 1 gallon pot is about 6.0 inches. Now the registered offset, we just measured it a while ago, and it was about 8.00. So I'm going to hit 8.00 and hit enter. So the registered offset is set and the drill depth is set. Okay. All right, now where do we go from here? Well, I can go to Q set. Okay, so here we go to Q set. Now we got a system speed of 15.00. Remember I said start slow. We've got a drill depth of 6.00, but we gotta get a pot height. So what I'm going to do right now, and you may think you know the pot height, but don't go guessing your pot height. If your pot height's 9.5 inches, it's going to put it in here at 10. If it's at 11 inches, it's going to put it in here at 10 inches. So that pot height is 10 inches. Okay. So now I'm going to go to next. Here we are. Now, drill clearance on doing bigger pots like 3s, 7s, 10s, 15s, 2 inches is about normal because you want some compaction. Your registered offset is 8.00. Your inhibit position, don't worry about that. That's for use with like gang drills and doing a setup for that. If you get a gang drill, we'll tell you how to do that. So I'm going to go to next right here. Alright, so what size pot are we doing? I have the option of a 1 to a 15 gallon. I'm going to hit 3 gallon, okay? Now I'm going to go to previous. I'm going to go back to main, and I'm going to go to auto. I just want to show you a couple things while I'm at the screen right quick, okay? I can go to main screen right here, okay? And I can go to manual. What is all this? Well, if you just want to fill pots, you can set your conveyor speed. You can put your settings in here, but let's just say you want to raise your drill up. I can hit these buttons right here, and I can run the drill up and down. I'm going to show you right quick. Cut. Got the drill in a down position. Now I'm going back up with it. All I'm doing is touching these arrows on here. But if you want to change the drill bit out, make it easy on yourself, just run it up like that. That way you can reach it where you can get to it. If you service the machine, if you're greasing the linear bearings inside. Now focus the camera on the conveyor belt. The arrows that are left to right run the conveyor belt. Now what good is that? Well, let's just say at the end of the day the hopper's got a third of the yard. Just to say it's got a yard of soil in it. You want to get it out. You can turn the soil elevator on. You can hit this arrow and you can run the soil out the other end and you can clean the machine out. It's like if you want to clean the machine out, you can run this arrow right here. That's running the drilling. That way you can run it either way to move it, whatever, to help you to clean your machine out. Okay. So anyway, I'm going to go back to manual. Okay. I mean to yeah. Now I'm at auto right here. I'm going to go auto and I'm going to go fill and drill. Now I can turn the machine on right now, and the belt's going to index. I'm going to show you, but before I do that, I want to explain to you something. Remember I told you not to use this emergency stop down here as a stop and start. Don't use that, but to use these two buttons up here, just hit stop first. Now I want to start it, so I just hit right here. Won't come on. Why not? Because the drill ain't on. It tells us right up here. Because let me explain to you what would happen. If you had a pot full of soil and the drill came down and the drill bit wasn't turning, something's going to give. You're going to bend a drill bit shaft, you're going to bust something, you're going to bust the pot. So I'm going to turn the drill bit on. Alright, I got my drill bit on. On the Max machine, it has a 5-to-1 ratio gearbox between the motor and the drill bit. So you can run that drill bit speed at about 50% on a 1-gallon bit. If you're running a 10-inch or 12-inch bit, you want to put it up on 100%. If you just got a regular machine that's not a Max and it don't have the the drill gear, the gearbox on the drill, you don't want to run that thing but about 40 or 50%. There's just no need in spinning that drill and wearing your bit out. So remember, our drill is on now and you don't see that red line, right? So I'm going to hit stop again and I'm going to hit start. Now what happened with this? Now he's going to turn the camera slowly and he's going to show you, and you're going to see that belt moving and you're going to see that pot transfer moving. And you're going to say, well, what's wrong with this thing? Because it's indexing and there's no pots on it. Well, this is true. It's indexing and there's no pots on it. But let's just say you had pots on it and the pot's coming through here and it's full, and when it hits this switch, it trips the switch and the drill comes down just like this on top of the pot. Here we go again. You can see this drill, how smooth it is. It's moving that rail just a little bit, but when you have soil in it, it's not going to do that because it's going to be putting pressure on the rail. There it goes again. Okay, the drill on this Easy Potter pot machine, it goes up and down on a timing belt. And you want to, when you first get your machine, and the first day you run it, you want to take your cover off. And you want to watch this belt and make sure it tracks right. Okay, now, keep your hands out of there, because this thing will cut your finger off. I'm just telling you right now. This plate right here has 3 linear bearings on the Max machine because it's got a drill and a gearbox. On the other machines it has 2. It has a hole in the side where you can get your grease gun in right here so that you can use lithium grease to grease your bearings, okay? So this limit switch right here is when you turn this machine on and you're pushing buttons and you're telling it what to do, this platform here will move to the top and this thing will go to the home position. That way it knows where it's at and what to do. But this timing belt right here, it just does this. It just goes up and back. It goes up and it goes back. Just a very minimal amount of travel. What it's doing is by you setting that limit of travel above that pot, you're limiting inertia or you're limiting movement. So what it allows for is you to go faster and have a smoother hole drilled into the pot. Keeps it from just shaking. The cam actions on the old machines moving around and everything just shaking, it destroys the hole. But this here helps the machine. So anyway, you can service the machine through here. Another thing that I want to mention right here is this is a gearbox right here, and this is a servo motor. There's an access hole right here to an Allen screw, and what that screw head does is it tightens the shaft between this motor and this gearbox. So if your drill was not doing right, there's a chance that this could get loose. You want to tighten it. Some people put Allen wrench in there, they tighten it down real hard, put a wrench on it for leverage, and they break that bolt off in there. Don't do that. Take your Allen wrench, a long handle one, get your rag on it, snug it down real tight, back it off. Snug it down, back it off. Do it 4 or 5 times, get that thing seated real good, and snug it back down, because by the time we ship these things all over the country, stuff gets loose. I don't care how much we try to tighten things up here, things work loose. Sometimes you may have an error come up on your machine, a triangle come up on there. 9 times out of 10, it's one of these connections that's loose, either here or on the other end going into the controller. Just little things to look for. Don't always happen, but I'm just giving you a heads up right now. Okay, now, one of the things that people will do with a machine like this is they'll overfill the pots. They'll look at the pot. When you first start potting, you're going to have 6 or 8 or 10 pots come through. They're going to have a little bit of soil in it, a little bit more, a little bit more. They're not going to be full till you get your soil flow regulated. You don't just grab it and turn it up to 100%. Just move it up incrementally, maybe 10% at a time, moving your soil flow on your elevator up. Because what you can do is you can overload this thing. Because what it does is it takes the soil up right here, and then the excess falls into the bottom. It has a scraper. I've been to a nursery before, and I've seen soil this deep in the bottom of a machine, when it only should be about that deep. You only want to return what little bit of spillage there is around the pots and what the drill bit takes out. And it's got a bar down in the bottom to set at angle, and what that's to do is to scrape the soil off and spread it out so that it can come around this return in the back of the machine. If you get a jam in a machine or something like this, you can reverse this elevator. You can just bump the switch, just bump it on the front of the machine. Don't leave it in reverse and walk off, because you'll bind something up. But this door right here opens. You can see right here it has a roll pin in the back, and the soil can come out right here if you need to unjam it, if you got a stick in it or something like that. So you're not going to need any wrenches or anything. This Max machine has bars on it, and it also has stainless steel chain, and it's a good heavy duty elevator system for a pot machine. So I'm going to shut this, and I'm going to put this back in there. Now, another thing I want to tell you, I sold a machine to somebody, and I shipped it over on an 18-wheeler, and when I got there, he had it all set up. He was real happy, and he had greased every bearing on that system, and he had blown every seal and every bearing on it. Don't let anybody grease your machine. Remember, use lithium grease. Here's a grease fitting right here, but remember the sealed bearings. You put your grease gun on there, ease it a little bit, ease it just a little bit more, ease it just a little bit more. It might take 2, it might take 3, it might take 4 shots. You get your machine greased, you're good for a 500,000, 750,000 pots. But if you blow your seals, you got to grease it all the time, then you got to deal with the bearing going out. So don't over grease your seals. Now, here in the southeastern United States, most people use blow molds. A few people use injection molds. But what I want to tell you is I had a customer that used the tall pots out on the west coast, and they was putting these pots on, and they was catching these lips on them, and it was turning them pots up on their edge, and the pots was falling over. He had a machine automatically feed them, and it was just cramming them in there like this. So they were falling over and just creating havoc. But when you set this pot on, you want to set it on like this. You want to set the other one on gently touching like that. You don't want like this. You don't want to leave a space in between like this, because dirt's just following in there and it's got to be recycled. But have your rails where there's no drag. I got drag on here. See this? It slowed that pot down. It's not important on this end. You're not drilling on this end. So you can set it on here where that's okay. There's no drag on it. And then to set this other where it's gently touching like that. Well, there it is. See there? Need to open that up a little bit where the pots gently touch, okay? When I was talking to you just a minute ago about electrical connection and some of these little yellow triangles coming up, remember, here's some more of these fittings on these servo motors. This is your gearbox that runs your soil elevator. These gearboxes have 90 weight gear oil in them. If you can use synthetic oil, spend just a little bit more money. Synthetic oil is much better than just regular gear oil. It don't get near as hot, and it does a good job. Another thing that I wanted to show you is you got if you're drilling on a machine and it ain't drilling in the center, when you get this thing loaded up with soil and you get the weight on this conveyor belt, this is a PVC belt. They have a 2% stretch factor in them. There's a chance that this belt can stretch a little bit and it can start slipping. So if it does that, what you're going to need to do is loosen these up and just snug this belt up. Loosen these 2 bolts up right here and tighten this belt up just a little bit. Don't tighten it up so tight you start bending your bolts. Don't do that. It don't take a lot. You know, it's like tightening a shoelace down on your foot. It'll hurt your foot if you get it too tight. But just snug it up just a little. Another thing, when you put your pots in right here, see how this chute is right here? This chute is on the edge right here. What I want to do is I want to loosen this chute and I want to move this over to where it's actually inside of the pot a little bit, about like that right there. This one here can come over a little bit about like that, because when it puts the soil in here and it cones the soil up on here, that whirlybird is going to wipe it off. If it's got a cavity, it's going to spread it out over this pot anyway. So make sure you got good soil flow, good adjustment. Don't overload your machine so it can recycle your soil. This machine here is smooth, it's quiet. You don't have no pot holders on it. It's going to do you a real good job. It's just a few basic details you need to go and cover about. Okay, the machine's been running. I'm not going to push my emergency stop. I'm going to push this red stop button right here and stop it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what's inside this machine right here. I'm going to loosen these 2 things up. Don't let this scare you. It's just modular stuff. See this thing right here? That's a brake. These are breakers. I can cut them off. Anybody working on a machine wants to make sure the breaker's off. This switch on the side cuts the power off to the control panel. Anytime you're not using the machine, make sure you turn this off. Better than that, put you a plug on it and unplug the machine. Why? You don't want to be tied to a power source if a lightning storm comes up. Okay, so you got 2 servos right here, controllers. This here is for your drill. This one here is for your indexing conveyor. This here controls the speed of the drill. This is the soil elevator, and this is in here because we have a plug for a 20-foot takeoff conveyor that the customer ordered with this machine. This is a starter. These are cube relays, and these are power supplies, just to familiarize yourself with just a little bit. Another thing that I want to tell you about when you're shipping a machine, sometimes if something don't work, these are very little wires and very little connections, and we snug them up and we pull on these wires when we build these machines to make sure they're all tight. But that one there feels a little loose. We're going to tighten that one up. They can work loose during transport. We ship one from here to Portland, Oregon, 2,880 miles. Something's going to work loose on it. So anyway, just wanted to give you a little overall view of what's inside of the control cabinet. One last thing that I want to show you is people ask us, are your drill bits aluminum? No, they're not. We get them dirty when we're working on them because we got the steel plate that goes on the bottom. There's not one put on this one yet, and we spray them silver. But anyway, what I wanted to show you is the coupler. If you can film this right here, the coupler that goes up on here. It's a coupler that holds that drill bit in with just Allen screws. Please don't put an impact on that and tighten them up. Make sure you keep them lubed up with WD-40, and make sure that you just snug them up hand tight, and it'll hold that drill bit. You'll have a different one for your bigger drill bits that this one will fit into. It's a whole lot bigger because the drill bits are humongous. And another thing that I wanted to show you, if you'll push up on this plate, well, you can see it right here. Run this drill down in manual until it touches on this rail, and spray these rods with WD-40 every day before you start running. WD-40 evaporates. It's got fish oil in it. It won't collect dust and dirt like a lot of things will, but make sure that this rod right here, just spray WD-40 down in here and keep it done. Some people recognize these drill boxes get hot. They do get hot. They're aluminum gearboxes. Remember a Volkswagen engine? It was an air-cooled engine. It got real hot, and you could switch it off, and you could hear that thing sitting there going tick, 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 because it was cooling off. So aluminum gearboxes do tend to heat up, but they also cool off quick. This is a plug for your oil. There's another aluminum gearbox there that runs that as well. And down here in the bottom, you got an auger. Now, one of the things that I want to mention right quick, when you first start potting on this thing and you're potting, and there's a pot comes through that ain't full, don't dump your pot back in here. If you got 6 or 8 or 10 pots come through there when you're setting up your machine, don't dump them back in here. Dump them back into the hopper. And remember what I said, don't overload your soil return. It'll handle a lot, but don't overload your soil return. I appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. Chances are you won't remember everything that's in this video. Chances are I forgot to tell you something about the machine. If I do, please feel free to give me a call. But you may want to go back and watch this video in the beginning 1 or 2 or 3 times so you can kind of get some things in your mind, and trust me, it'll help you in setting up this machine. We say in our advertisement that you can learn to run this machine in about 30 minutes. I got a phone call an hour ago from a customer in Florida that got one. He said all his help knows how to run it now. They hadn't had it but a week. So that's a good thing. It's not that complicated, just a few little things that you got to get down in the beginning. All your old machines had all your mechanical adjustments and everything. This don't have near the adjustment. It don't have near the wear and tear. We appreciate your interest in buying a Easy Potter potting system, and we hope it lasts you a long time. And if we can help you in the future, let us know. Thank you.